All right, we're going to take you now to the Iranian Foreign Ministry, where the spokesperson is speaking. Let's listen in to Esmail Baghaei.
The member states, all the states members in the United Nations must be reminded that it is a fact. If you truly believe in the UN Charter, if you truly believe in the rule of law, the international law, and if you believe in the collective security of the international community, you must act. It is time for the Security Council to take the necessary measures. Enough with words. It is time for action. The predator cannot be put on equal footing with the victim. You cannot continue to adopt dual standards. The crimes and the belligerence, as well as the brutal violations by the Israeli entity, as they targeted residential areas, they targeted peaceful nuclear facilities in Isfahan and other areas, in utter violation of the international law, the international practices and norms. It is the Zionist enemy that initiated this belligerence, assassinating our scientists, killing innocent civilians in their homes. It is the Zionist entity that they continue to target and kill innocent civilians in their residential areas. And here would like to tell you some stories. I will tell you some of the stories that are being unfolding here in Iran. This is Ahsan Ishraqi, one of our innocent, peaceful civilians, a banker, a father who ventures out to work every day and comes home to lay food on the table to his family. He was one of the victims. Ahsan, his family, his innocent child never were in possession of a nuclear weapon, nor were they posing any threat to anybody in the whole world. It is the Zionist entity that has been accustomed to killing innocent children, as they are doing in Gaza. This innocent family were killed. They were buried in one grave, and in the stone head of the grave it is written, a 9-year-old innocent girl killed and buried side by side with her father. What crime did she commit? This is Muhammad Kuni, a young athlete. He was killed, an innocent child, young man, an athlete, an active student. He was killed at the hands of the Zionist criminals. He was a decorated athlete, yet he was killed by the barbarian airstrikes by the Zionist enemy. He had a dream to be crowned as an Olympic athlete. Now he rests 6 feet under. He has gone forever. He with his father were killed survived by the mother, who is now bereaved and weeping over her loss. Another story. The story of Mr. Baghaei. He had a dream. As he returned with high dreams and big visions, he was living abroad and he returned home. Not only was he a talented professional, he was an elite programmer. 3 years from his return, he returned to serve his country. He was not seeking fame or fortune. He just came home to serve his country. He started to educate his peers and students, to instill faith and hope. He also had many dreams to see his homeland, Iran, at the forefront. He was victimized. He fell victims to the false allegations. He fell victims to the false lies that the Zionist entity had no conflict with the innocent civilians. He was a professor, a professional, and an educator. He wanted to eradicate ignorance and darkness. This is another story, Shams. She also had high dreams. She roamed across the streets on her bike. She was also a mountain climber. She toured the world, coming home with adventures and stories to tell. She was also a very talented student, helpful, kind, and generous. She always invited her friends to come around, sit to coffee or tea, and tell them stories. For days and nights, she was surrounded by her peers, friends, telling them stories and instilling hope, and she was killed. Her residential flat was targeted by an Israeli missile. This innocent, life-loving child was killed. These are very few from many thousands of stories.
در این شرایطی که حالا جمهوری اسلامی تحت حمله مسلحانه و غیر قانونی طرف متجاوز یعنی رژیم صهیونیستی
I am ready to answer your questions.
بین‌المللی به ویژه کشورهای دوست مانند چین و روسیه و کشورهای همسایه و منطقه
I offer the deepest condolences to the Iranian people.
این جنگ فقط علیه ایران نیست. این جنگ
We hope that this malignant, cancerous entity will be uprooted from the region. The Zionist entity has initiated a belligerence on false grounds. What do you expect from the international community and other friendly states like China? I told you earlier, this war is not against Iran. It is against humanity, against human civilization. It is not a war against a country with which the Zionist entity was was in conflict or with a border conflict. It is a belligerence initiated by a criminal group, defying the international community, defying the international law for centuries. This Zionist entity has been violating not only the international law, but the human international law and all the norms and practices, including the UN Charter. All those who believe in the peaceful co-living and all those who believe in the international law are required to take action to put an end to these brutal, ruthless crimes, to pressure this Zionist entity and to bring him to account. We also call upon the friendly countries, namely those who have influence within the circles of the United Nations and the Security Council, to invest on all the resources in order to have a binding resolution endorsed, a binding resolution against the Zionist entity. This is the first step to begin with. It must be declared to the whole world. It is a baseless belligerence. No justification should be given to an unjust belligerence. The actions of the Zionist entity is in utter violation of the international law, the articles of the United Nations charters, and all the norms and practices. The articles of the UN charters must be highlighted. Now, all states are at trial. It is a test in the face of this hubris and thuggery of the Zionist regime. As you mentioned, the United States is assisting Israel in their belligerence against Iran. However, it is reported that negotiations are still a possibility. As a matter of fact, we should look at the realities on the ground. We were actively engaged in negotiations, and all of a sudden, we were taken by surprise by this Zionist belligerence. We wouldn't have imagined that they would take such an action backed by the United States. It is the Zionist entity that undermined diplomacy. It is the responsibility of the United States to take a firm stance. The contradictory stance adopted by the United States in the face of this belligerence are not helpful. However, we do not have any doubt that the United States administration, as well as the United States officials, are accomplices to this belligerence.
در چنین شرایطی آیا اصلا طرح بحث مذاکره بی‌معنی نخواهد بود؟
We offer condolences to the Iranian people. You stated that the United States administration should make their position clear. America is still maneuvering and raising
آنچه که هست
false
اعلام
reports
بکنه.
about negotiations.
اگر منشور سازمان
Raising the
ملل
issue
متحد
of
برای همه
negotiations
کشورها لازم
is
اجراست، همه کشورهای
pointless
عضو
at
سازمان
this
ملل متحد
time.
به شمول 5
The
عضو دائم شورای
Security
امنیت سازمان
Council
ملل متحد
must make it
باید در
clear
برابر این
that this
تجاوز
is
موضع بگیرن، اون رو محکوم
unlawful,
بکنن و
unjustifiable
اقدامات جدی
belligerence.
اتخاذ بکنن، از جمله از طریق صدور یک
It's
قطعنامه
time
روشن و
to
بدون ابهام
stop adopting
در
dual
محکوم
standards.
کردن این تجاوز. آخرین خبر بفرمایید.
The United Nations Charter is a document to be respected by all the world states, namely the member states, and all the member states must strongly condemn the Zionist entities' belligerence and also issue a crystal clear, unequivocal condemnation as well as a binding resolution.
به فارسی حرف میزنن، تو همین خاک به دنیا اومدن و در همین خاک هم به شهرت رسیدن.
At this dire hour, as our country is
میخوام ببینم که پیام شما
engaged in an all-out war, all the Iranians have one voice. It is to defend our homeland. Many of the Iranians were born here, speak the language, and many we find themselves on the other camp. What's your message to them? Those cannot be called countrymen. They are stabbing our people in their back. We cannot deviate from the right path, and the homeland's fate cannot be decided by those treacherous civilians. We offer condolences to the Iranian people. It is true that the Zionist entity is backed and assisted by many countries. Even some states expressed their preparedness to get involved in the fight. If this happens, will your friends and allies extend any form of assistance to you?
دیدگاهامون رو با اونها به اشتراک بگذاریم. ظرف 2-3 روز گذشته وزیر محترم امور خارجه با
We are coordinating with all the countries of the region. We are also communicating and coordinating with all the Muslim states. It is common knowledge that all the perils resulting from this belligerence require coordination. The foreign minister telephoned dozens of heads of states, and I assure you that all the region's states utterly condemned this belligerence.
جنایت اخیر رژیم صهیونیستی فکر می‌کنم یک روز قبل در
None
تأسیسات نفتی ایران
of the regional countries could endure to live side by side with an apartheid state. We should smother this division. We should prevent this cancerous regime from spreading. The Zionist entity attacked the peaceful nuclear facilities. It is a very grave step. It is a living proof that the Zionist entity is willing to plunge the entire region into mayhem and to bring into the conflict many world countries. We are certain that the world states will stand on the right side, stand up to the Zionist entity, put an end to their barbarian belligerence, especially that the Organization of Islamic Conference member states will be convened shortly, and this war will be on top of their agenda. Again, we offer condolences to the Iranian people. The Zionist entity and their backers are willing to get the United States and other Western countries like Britain, Germany and France implicated into the war. We heard some statements from Germany that the three countries are willing to talk to Iran. How do you comment on this contradiction? It is the responsibility of those countries to provide an answer to this contradictory statement. Britain, Germany, and France are permanent UN Security Council members, and they are not only UN members, but they are also key players in Europe. And if they are truly respectful to the UN Charter and other resolutions handed down by the Security Council, they should have condemned the belligerence by the Zionist entity, namely on the peaceful nuclear facilities in Natanz. It is recognized under Chapter 7 as a peaceful, lawful nuclear facility. It is really unjustifiable to be attacked by a country that is already in possession of a nuclear weapon. The European countries should do one thing: to condemn the aggressor, the belligerent Zionist entity, and their attack on Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities.
Time for the UN Security Council to act and end the brutal violations of the Israeli entity, the targeting and killing of civilians in their homes. The words there of Esmail Baghaei, the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson. He went on to talk about stories of some of those civilians killed in Israeli strikes. People like Ihsan Ishraqi, who he described as a banker and father, buried with his 9-year-old daughter, and Shems, a mountain climber and student, also killed, a child killed by an Israeli missile. Let's bring in Sitara Sadeghi. She is a researcher at the University of Tehran, joins us now from Isfahan. Good to have you with us. So listening there to the statement by Esmail Baghaei, to what extent is Iran, there's a lot of talk about coordinating with other countries, about calling on the UN Security Council to act, but to what extent is Iran really relying on diplomatic action to end this conflict?
Thanks for having me. I don't think at this point Iran is actually relying on international support, because the experience that Iran has had during the U.S.-imposed war during Saddam's invasion of Iran, but also based on what's happening or what has been happening in Gaza and Palestine for at least about 2 years, not talking about what has happened before. And the international community in Arab states did nothing to prevent this genocide or stop it. I think Iran is showing the world that it would work very hard to try all paths of diplomacy and avoid aggression. But once its lands and airspace have been violated and targeted, it has the right to defend itself. And even Iran engaging in nuclear talks this time was a big sign of how Iran was committed to trying diplomacy and peace before engaging in any forms of military action. But relying on those supports coming from outside is another thing which I don't think Iran is actually expecting any military support, except for maybe one or two allies in the region.
The foreign ministry spokesperson also talking about some of the civilian victims of Israeli strikes. We're seeing Israeli strikes continuing on Iran. What sort of domestic impact is this happening? Is it weakening or strengthening support for the authorities as you read it?
Based on my observations living here, it's strengthening the public support for the Islamic Republic, for the country, for Iran, because once the aggression starts, it's not going to distinguish between a pro-government or pro-Iran citizens and an anti-Iran citizen. It affects everyone equally. And people who had many grievances about the economy or about how the country is run are now talking about unity and how we should strongly respond to these aggressions. Otherwise, the bully of the region will not stop and will continue the aggression against civilians and innocent people. So I would say it definitely strengthens the unity among the population.
Israel Katz has been quoted as saying that the residents of Tehran are going to pay the price, and soon. Is Iran ready to deal with a scenario in which we see Israeli strikes that engage in sort of wide-scale destruction that we've seen elsewhere, whether it's in the southern Dahiya district of Beirut or Gaza?
Well, Iran is a huge country. It's the size of Germany and France combined. It has 19 million people. So it would be a much more difficult job for Israel to do what we have seen in Dahiya or in Gaza. But Israel also has no limitation in massacring and carrying out ethnic cleansing and genocide. But it's also important to understand that at this point, it seems like Israel has sort of lost the superiority and the control that it had at the beginning of this aggression over the airspace, and most of the attacks.
But we haven't seen an effective, Sitara, we haven't seen an effective response by the Iranian air defense system. Are they really ready for a sort of Dahiya scenario in Tehran? I don't know where you are getting your news from, but Iran has intercepted a lot of Israeli missiles. I'm getting it from the Iranian sources.
All night
Iranian sources talk about damage being inflicted, right, on a lot of Iranian civilian and military infrastructure.
Those damages that you're talking about, that's what's the point that I was trying to make, if you let me finish my sentence. The damages that we're seeing are mostly from operatives inside Iran, which is very dangerous and which complicates the situation. But for example, what we saw yesterday in Tehran was mostly car bombings and drones that are operating from inside Iran, and that requires a lot more intelligence gathering and intelligence operations. I'm not saying Israel is not damaging or inflicting harm on Iranian citizens or Iranian infrastructures, but I'm saying at this moment, when it began, it was all through the airspace. But at this moment, it seems like it's mostly from inside the country. And I think with the intelligence control or like command that Iran has shown so far, it seems like this will gradually reduce. And the next that we need to observe is how much Israel will receive, how much more, I should say, Israel will receive support from the U.S. and other Western countries in carrying out its strikes over Iran. How willing are Arab countries, Arab neighbors, to offer their airspace to Israel to carry out these strikes? So that's, I think, what we need to observe and wait for the next few days.
Sitara Sadeghi, researcher at the University of Tehran, thank you so much for joining us.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.